You've probably heard this before. Refugees receive an unfair level of government support. The narrative is that they consume endless programs and welfare while native-born citizens pay the price, creating a massive hole in the national budget. Right? In this video, we're going to find out if that's true. Spoiler alert, it's not. For the people who don't want to stay for the whole video, here is the bottom line. An internal government study found that over a 10-year period, refugees generated a net fiscal surplus of $63 billion. They didn't create a deficit, they made us a profit. People in a hurry can leave now with that headline. But if you are like us, if you're curious, analytic, and like to see the actual receipts, stay right here. We need to answer 3 critical questions to understand how that number is even possible. First, how much cash do they actually get? Second, is the system designed to keep them dependent? And third, is this program a charity, or is it actually America's toughest investment portfolio? Let's look at the ledger. Just a quick reminder, if you appreciate this in-depth content, please take a moment to like and subscribe. It helps us bring you more. Now, on with the story. Let's start with the money. There is a persistent belief that refugees are handed a blank check upon arrival. You might imagine full rent coverage for years, or a generous monthly stipend. Here is the reality check. The Department of State provides a one-time reception and placement grant. As of 2024, that amount is exactly $2,425. That is not a monthly allowance. That is a one-time payment that has to cover rent, furniture, clothing, and food for their first 3 months. In most American cities, that barely covers the security deposit, and the government knows it's not enough. The State Department explicitly anticipates that this grant won't cover everything, requiring local agencies to solicit private donations just to meet basic needs. It's not a fully funded government handout. It is a public-private partnership where private charity has to fill the gap. But wait, it gets tougher. You might assume that because they are fleeing war, their flight to safety is a gift from the U.S. taxpayer. It isn't. Before they even board the plane, refugees sign a promissory note. The flight is a loan. They arrive in America not with a bank account full of cash, but with debt to the federal government that they are legally required to repay. It's not a free ride. It's a bill. Quick question for you. If you had to move your entire family to a new country tomorrow, starting with 0 assets, how fast do you think you could get back on your feet? Let us know in the comments. Now, critics will point out that refugees are eligible for programs like SSI and TANF, and that is true. They are exempt from the waiting periods other immigrants face because they arrive with nothing. But here is the twist. The system is designed as a boot camp, not a hammock. These benefits have strict time limits, often capped at 5 or 7 years, which creates a ticking clock. They have to work and fast. Does the pressure work? According to the Office of Refugee Resettlement, 81% of refugees enrolled in the matching grant program achieve full economic self-sufficiency within just 180 days. That is 6 months from arrival to independence. This brings us to the payoff. Because the system forces them to hustle so hard, so early, they turn into economic engines. Data shows that refugees are actually 44% more likely to be entrepreneurs than US-born citizens. They don't just take jobs, they create them. Think about the psychology behind that statistic. Why are they starting businesses at such high rates? It's because when you start with nothing, you are forced to build something. We see this phenomenon across the country. refugees revitalizing declining neighborhoods by opening grocery stores, trucking companies, and repair shops. They often step into the labor shortages that are crippling industries like manufacturing and healthcare support. They aren't just creating income for themselves, they are expanding the tax base for their local communities. That business activity is exactly why the long-term fiscal return is so positive. It turns out that the boot camp pressure we talked about earlier creates a class of citizens who are uniquely driven to succeed. And they stay. While many people rent, refugees plant roots. After 20 years in the country, nearly 60% of refugee households own their own homes, a rate that actually beats out other immigrant groups. They are buying into the American dream, literally. When you add up the loans repaid, the businesses started, and the taxes filed, the math changes. Remember that internal government report we mentioned at the start? It wasn't some partisan paper. It was a 2017 draft study by the Department of Health and Human Services, produced during the Trump administration. Analyzing a full decade of data, the HHS found that while refugees used $206 billion in services, they contributed nearly $270 billion in tax revenue. That is a net profit to the taxpayer of $63 billion. Far from being a burden we carry, the refugee program is an asset we acquired at a discount. But profit doesn't matter if we aren't safe. The final fear is usually about security. Here is the fact that gets ignored. Refugees are the single most vetted travelers to enter the United States. DHS and State Department officials have testified under oath that refugees face a higher level of scrutiny than tourists, students, or business travelers. Let's be specific about what that scrutiny actually looks like. It isn't a quick background check at the airport. It is a 13-step federal gauntlet. Before they can even be considered for travel, they undergo iris scans, full handprint biometrics, and medical screenings. Their names are run through the FBI's terrorist screening database and classified Defense Department records gathered directly from conflict zones. And here is the kicker. This vetting is recurrent. That means their profile is checked and rechecked continuously against new intelligence right up until the moment they board the flight. If a single new red flag appears, they don't fly. Compare that to the millions of travelers who enter on standard tourist visas every year. The refugee path is the most difficult, watched, and restricted route into America. It's an 18 to 24-month forensic audit of their lives involving the FBI, the Defense Department, and the National Counterterrorism Center. In fact, 27 retired U.S. generals and admirals wrote to the White House affirming that this program isn't a threat. It's a vital national security interest that supports our troops and allies. But why would military commanders care so much about this? It is because many of the people in this pipeline are the interpreters or contractors who stood shoulder to shoulder with American soldiers in combat zones. The generals argued that keeping our promise to them isn't just charity. It is essential for maintaining the trust of local populations in future conflicts. If we abandon the people who risk their lives to help us, we lose our credibility on the global stage. It turns out, this program is also a critical tool of American soft power. So, does the myth that refugees receive unfair government support hold up? The verdict: that is completely false. The system is rigorous. The loans are repaid, and the investment pays off in billions. At the essence of fairness is recognizing refugee aid as a bridge to contribution, not a handout. Attorney Chris M. Ingram encapsulates this perfectly. Refugee support is modest and merit-based, enabling them to rebuild lives and enrich America, proving equity through opportunity rather than excess. In this video series, attorney Chris M. Ingram and his team are debunking false narratives to raise awareness about the positive impact immigrants have always had on making America great. We'd love to read your thoughts in the comments below, so stay tuned for our next video where we take on another immigration myth.